Hi, my name is Dawson Church from EFT Universe. I'd like to share with you today one thing that the field of psychology over the last century got completely and utterly wrong. And that has to do with research. Now, I am a research fan. I am known as a researcher. I have in some way been involved with over 100 clinical trials, and so I'm known as somebody who is prominent in driving the research in this field forward and helping bring evidence-based energy therapies into primary care. But I'll tell you what psychology got completely and utterly wrong in the last century. And that was when psychological research really got going in the 1960s and 70s. And researchers were using tools, assessments, like the Beck Anxiety Inventory, the Beck Depression Inventory. And what these are questionnaires. They have, in any of those cases, 20 or 30 questions. And so you score a patient's well-being on those questionnaires. And so if somebody had a 0 for the questionnaire, that meant they had no depression. Maybe if they had 6, they had mild depression. If they had 12, they had moderate depression. If they had 18, they had severe depression. There were various ways of measuring those psychological conditions. And so if you went into a psychological office, a testing office, and you filled out an inventory and got a 0, it's like, yes, okay, that person has no anxiety and no depression. And for decades, that's the way research was done. There was a 0 scale, and then we measured how deep and wide your symptoms ran. And when they were down to a 0, then you had no depression, no anxiety, no PTSD, no phobias. Everything was great. Except that kind of research, in its very nature, by its very structure, missed an incredible and vital part of human personality and function, and that was not just getting to 0, where you had no depression and no anxiety, but what about elevated states? What about happiness? What about elevated mood? What about feeling really great and joyful and fantastic and fabulous? Psychology missed that because psychology never even had any tools for measuring it. It wasn't until the field of positive psychology came along in the 1990s and said, hey, we're missing out on this whole part of human experience called happiness. They began to measure happiness and people's degree of happiness. And so I always, from the very earliest research I did, I always try to include a measure of happiness in my research. I wanted to know not just how people's symptoms were in terms of going down the scale into those conditions, but when they hit 0, when they hit that normal baseline, how much better did they get? So now, for example, I know when people do our relationship skills course, they get a lot happier in the relationships, and their general happiness level raises a lot as well. When they go to an EFT workshop, when they take one of our professional workshops, I know, based on research, that their happiness goes up by over 30%. I know that because we've looked at that numerically. We study those things now. So when I was first constructing our energy psychology certification program, we have a module on coaching psychology, and I looked around and I found the very, very best coaching psychology course in the business. It was just hands down. There were several of these courses on coaching psychology, and I picked the very best one available at that time. It was available from another company. And we used that for the first few classes in our certification program. But I began to notice that it was missing some stuff. It was missing case histories. There weren't many case histories. Although it relied on psychology, it was missing all of the most recent neuroscience research. So we wound up tinkering with their course at first, and then just throwing it out and writing our own whole course from scratch. And that's what we have now. One of the modules in our certification program is the coaching psychology module. And it is just fantastic. It's neuroscience-based, has all the latest brain imaging information in it. And so it gives you the best of coaching psychology, neuroscience. But at the end, we take on this whole question of thriving. So the last 2 modules of the coaching psychology course are thriving and peak states. Because you don't just want to bring your clients to the point of not feeling terrible, feeling neutral. That's okay. And if you have a person who's depressed or anxious, they'll take it. They'll say, oh my goodness, I'll be just fine if I can get out of my depression. That's a great goal to aim at. But how about once you get out of depression and anxiety and you're at 0 on all those scales, how about seeing how happy you can get? So we have all this neuroscience now on thriving, and we show you how you can train your clients to thrive. So they're going to come to you with problems, and as an energy psychology practitioner, you'll help them solve those problems, transcend those problems. But when they've gone through that phase of solving their problems, the next thing to do is move into thriving. We also show you how to induce peak states. Every morning when I wake up in the morning, I do this. The very first thing I do, I wake up in the morning. I do have coffee first. Coffee is important. But with my cup of coffee, I meditate and I induce those peak states. Then I start my day. I can tell you the kind of work day you have if you do that is very different from the kind of work day you have if you turn on the news, fill your mind with problems, answer your emails, read your texts. You're not going to have nearly the kind of day you have if you bring yourself into an elevated peak state first, and then you tackle your problems from that peak state. So that is the last 2 parts of the coaching psychology part of the Energy Psychology Certification Program. So I want to invite you to ask yourself that question, not just how can I be neutral, how do I be at 0? How do I thrive? How do I live a vibrant life? How do I fill my life with joy? How do I invoke peak states? It's powerful to do that for you. It's powerful to do that for your clients. You learn both of those things in our Energy Psychology Certification Program. If you'd like to download a sampler of the program, just click on the button below and do that. Also give me a thumbs up for this video and ring the notification bell to be notified of future videos. Thanks so much.